Hello, Internet. Today's interview is with the vibrantly talented artist Sam Guay. And no, she's not related to Rebecca Guay, but interestingly enough, she did study under her. I studied under her table personally. Or really anything that I could hide under from my older brother Lance, who was one of those sporty vampires who used to tease me for reading books all the time. Books are for loser nerds, he'd say. Sports are cool. Well, who's playing sports now, Lance? Nobody, because you drank Gatorade spiked with holy water and exploded. In front of everyone. Why would a vampire even drink Gatorade in the first place? Oh well, the past is past. No need to linger on memories of exploding brothers. So without further ado, Sam Guay. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so when, and this is the traditional, Dellsville question, but I have to ask it. How old were you when the artist, when it was clear that the path of the artist was the one for you?
Uh, I think in third grade, I decided that I was going to grow up to be an animator. And when I discovered what animators do, I was like, this is not for me, but I'm still going to be an artist. So it's just like, you have that artistic ability when you're a kid, and then some people just don't grow out of it. So I just didn't grow out of it.
That's an interest. That's a common answer I've heard, but there's some people who it's like, oh, they don't have it. Like they can draw their stick figures, and then they grow out of that. But in any case, one thing about animation that's interesting though was the reason why you didn't care for animation was the redundancy of it? Was that maybe?
Yeah. Well, the other thing was, I think what I really wanted to do was draw my own stuff and tell stories, which is all animation related. But I was thinking, my exposure at that age to animation was, animators who work in animation studios and were drawing the same characters that they did not create like over and over. And I was like, I don't think this is for me. So
Now, if you were the lead, if it was something that was adapted from maybe say of your own work, would that change your tune?
maybe. I think animation is really, really cool still. And I think that I love the idea of a bunch of creative people working together on a project to make something that is like bigger than any one person could do.
Hmm.
So like I would probably do it just to try it, or
For the
if
collaborative.
I could find the right fit for me in that kind of situation, I totally would love to do that.
Do you have scripts in mind? Do you have stories that you put away? I'm sure you do, but is that sort of where the maybe the impetus would be, where it would start?
Um, well, my process is kind of all over the place. So sometimes I'll draw things and then the story will happen from the drawing where there was no story to begin with. And then sometimes I'll have the idea and I'll do the writing beforehand and then it'll become a drawing. It's all just sort of like flopped together, a little chaotic.
So with inspiration, there was an interesting word that I read that was called dream working. Can you explain what that is, as far as how that ties into your art and your inspiration?
I'm not sure what the definition of like dream working is because that might be like a more like occult witchcraft like actual thing. But for me personally, I love taking inspiration from dreams. So I've always had pretty vivid dreams since I was a kid, and at some point in like middle school, high school, I was really into it, and I taught myself how to lucid dream, which is
Yes.
when yeah you become conscious in your dream and you kind of can take control in a way, or explore, and everything is just so vivid it's like real life or even like hyper realistic in a way. It's very hard to explain how, like it's hard to explain the experience if you've never experienced it. It can be really intense and weird.
Did you
um,
learn about it from Carl Jung, the Jungian analysts and the Jungian people?
No, I learned. I'm actually not sure how I learned about it. I grew up in the like wild west of the internet when there, little kids could get on the internet and go to all sorts of weird forums. Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
on a lot of like weird, like occults, like and like conspiracy theory forums at that age, um, like pretty young. And so I think probably around there I was exposed to the concept of lucid dreaming. And then I found some like forums that were kind of dedicated to learning it. And then I taught myself. It took years to figure out. And when I finally did it, I was like, yes. And then it got easier from there. Um, but yeah.
Where do you think the now the you obviously have an undercurrent or of like horror or supernatural, creepy, and I don't mean it a pejorative because I love horror. I mean, like I got my Fangoria shirt on here, right? So
Yeah.
I love anything like that. But where do you think that came from? Where do you think that inclination was? It because you grew up in Salem,
I
or
did
you?
not grow up in
Oh,
Salem,
you didn't. Okay,
actually.
you do
I
you
grew
live
up
in
in
Salem?
like rural New Hampshire. So,
It could be a
um,
horror movie out there if you with your imagination. I'm sure you could.
oh yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure if it was a natural inclination or not. Um, I was and I still am kind of like a solitary person. I like to go do things on my own. I have a cat who's probably gonna jump up on my lap in a minute.
I have a dog
Um,
who will probably bark.
um, so I liked to go out in the woods by myself and do things. I've always had very vivid dreams, and I think I just when things got weird in an uncomfortable way, either with like dreams or things that you know, wandering around in the woods, you find like dead animals and you see like life and death and nature just happening. Um, it wasn't something that I ever shied away from. It was, just another thing to be curious about. So, um, I think it was a comfortable place for me almost. It never seemed um, like scary or threat. Maybe it does seem scary still, but it never seemed like a threat. It just seemed like something that to be curious about. Um, so I actually didn't get too much into horror movies until I was probably a little bit older. I probably didn't really get into them until like late college, probably. So I think where it all started was just, you know, seeing that it was a part of life and being curious about it.
That makes sense because if you're out in it's sort of in a serene environment and you come across something that is as as that would be ordinarily like say roadkill is horrific because it's unnatural. You can tell how violent it is, but if it's in the woods, it's got a natural it's got the circle of life kind of feel to it. It's scary, but there is something that is not. It's not a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a violation, as it were. And so
Mhm.
you get the experience when you go out there that that it is something that is not an abomination, and I can see how that would then translate into not scary. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's natural. It's a part of experience and being alive, and there's still beauty in it. And I think that even if you are afraid, just leaning into that discomfort to be curious and find beauty in things. It doesn't mean that it's not painful or scary or something that you grieve over. All of that is also true, but it can still be, it can still have its sort of beauty to it.
Can't if anybody tries to argue that there isn't a natural fascination with things like death, they're lying because just look at television. I mean, the amount of shows that are about serial killers, which I think are frankly many of them are in just flat out poor taste, and it's a
Mhm.
lot healthier to try to translate it through artwork or viewing it through art rather than hearing stories about things that happen to actual people. But there is a fascination. It's impossible for us not to be fascinated with it. I mean, nobody here
Yeah.
knows. No, you can't. Nobody here has talked to a dead person. Well, at least like not in a formal setting, I would say.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's definitely it's yeah, I understand the fascination too, because it's like we it's something that we'll all go through. Pain and grieving and death and all of that. Um, sooner or later in one way or another.
Mhm.
So I think it's normal to have a little fascination, because you kind of you probably want to not go into it blindly. Like obviously you can't really have an experience of dying without, that
Yeah,
being the kind of, I mean, there are some people who have near death experiences and stuff like that.
but there's still a.
Oh, okay. All right, calm down, buddy.
That's it. That's fine. That's great. But as
This
you were
is
saying,
Meriwether.
hello, Meriwether.
Yeah.
Do you have how many cats do you have?
We got two.
What's
There's Meriwether, and there's Gideon, who we just call Baby because she's tiny.
there's it's true though. I mean, like you have to have some fascination with it. But I Meriwether threw me
Sorry.
off my line. But I can get back there. Think, Alper, think. Oh, that's impossible. But we'll just move on to the next question. What was your first paying gig as an artist?
First paid gig. Ooh. Uh, I think it was um like totally not fantasy related. It was like, oh wait, no. In college, uh I did an illustration for some like children's book thing. I like illustrated one of the characters. It was something like they, this publishing company in the place where I went to college. They did some like um, something with the illustration students where they had us all like do the thing, and then they picked their favorite and they paid us. Um, so it's nice to get paid. You're not just like getting taken advantage of as
Right,
as a
right.
student. Not that it was probably not a lot, but yeah, that was my first paid gig. I cannot remember the name of the book that it was for, or the character, or the publishing company. So
That's okay. So, um, I guess skipping. I don't know how many years I'm skipping ahead, but you've been taking cracks at it for a while. But 2015 was when I had heard in an interview that was the first time that you had said you worked as a professional artist.
yeah, it might have been 2014, maybe. I'm not sure if it was 2015 or 2014. It would have been late in the year anyway. But I did, I think, a cover for Llewellyn, which is kind of like a new age publishing company.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was the like professional. There was a contract, and it was for a reputable company and all that. So.
Now, how did you how did you come into the path of Rebecca Gay? Which I'll clarify. We can clarify it again and again and again. No relation. Uh,
Yeah, no relation.
it's just a lucky circumstantial thing. But how did that happen? How did you come into her orbit?
So when I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12, I got like some Magic the Gathering cards, and I got one of her cards, and I saw she had the same last name as me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I really liked her art. Um, I don't remember what card it was. It was something with a mermaid on it.
Hmm.
Um, and like a big spear, I think. Um,
I'll hunt it
do
down.
you know what it is? Yeah, so that was interesting. And then maybe like a a year or two later, I don't remember how old I was. I was taking this like anime drawing class or something, and the teacher was like, um, "Sorry if the cats are. I have no idea if you can hear them. They're causing trouble."
Can't hear a thing.
Cool. Um, so the teacher was like, "Oh, I saw you have the same last name as Rebecca. You should reach out to her and see if you could get a class with her or something." And I was pretty young and shy, and I never reached out to her. Um, and then fast forward years later, I think a year or two after I graduated from college, I just had no direction for what to do with my art. I was kind of like, pretty lost feeling.
Like
And
floundering.
yeah, I found somehow I came across a mentorship with Rebecca Guay. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And so I took a mentorship with her, and it, one, helped me improve my art a lot. It helped me find, a science fiction fantasy illustration community that, like I was looking for, where my work kind of fit in. Um, and it gave me some direction, and it was kind of great because it just, it was the story goes over years, and it just comes full circle where I do actually, end up taking a class with Rebecca Guay. So yeah.
What's an example of like a specific lesson that was taught, in that classroom setting
Yeah.
that that
So
really helped?
she still does classes, though I think she's focused more on fine art now. It's through a smart school.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So for example, and this seems very silly, but like it's something I should have known in college, but maybe it's one of those things you have to learn again and again before it really sticks in your brain.
Hmm.
The importance of doing like value studies and getting value to really work in your piece before you do anything with color. Um,
And
yeah, that
for a layman
very
though,
basic.
for a layman, what is value study? What is that?
Okay, so value is like the lightness or darkness of a color or whatever. So when you do a value study, it's usually monochromatic, ranging from white to black. And a value study is kind of like you got your drawing and you figure out what the values are going to be in the piece before you figure out color. So, for example, on the piece behind you, if you were to kind of like make that black and white, the value studies, um, because I want your eye sort of in the cup where the like little demon is. Yeah, you can't really see, but and on the character's face, those are going to be the lightest places, and then the darkest values are kind of like in the background, and you'll notice that it fades to sort of like darker grays on the side, if you're imagining this in black and white. And so it
Yeah.
helps you control where the viewer is looking in the piece. Yeah.
Okay. So she taught
So
you
yeah.
the importance of just of practicing that.
Yeah. Just really technical skills. It really helped.
I mean, isn't it funny how I guess that's why the people, when they teach like that they know what they're talking about, because it seems stuff like that, it seems so obvious, right? And then you look back on it, you're like, wow,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so basic, so obvious.
But I mean, it helps immensely. So,
Yeah.
Magic the Gathering, you were playing it when you were younger, or was that just something that you discovered the artwork and like the artwork for?
I did play it a little bit when I was younger, mostly with friends, nothing competitive, nothing super serious. Um, and I didn't get like super into it, just because, I had to buy my own cards and I didn't have much of an allowance, and I was probably spending it on art supplies or something. But I really, really liked art. So the art stuck with me, and I still have most of my favorite cards in a little deck.
Do you when was the well, I guess, because I know I talked to a lot of artists who say magic was the goal, like they you know, eye of the tiger. Some people they sort of not happenstance their way into it, but it's less of a, you know, of a driven force. But how was your journey getting into the game? What was the process there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of had convinced myself that I would never work for Magic the Gathering. You know, people would come by my desk at conventions and be like, "Oh, you should. Have you ever worked for Magic the Gathering? You should work for them." And at that point, Magic doing, um, wasn't really hiring artists that had their own style. They were hiring artists that would fit their kind of like branded style.
Right.
Um, and and that was the reason that I was like, yeah, they're never going to hire me for anything. So it wasn't even on my radar. And then um, and then the pandemic happened, and I was kind of in a low spot. I was supposed to have like my first solo show, and it just didn't pan out and everything. And I ended up canceling the solo show.
Mm.
And basically immediately after I did that, Magic the Gathering reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you want to do some cards?" And I was like, "Do you have the right person?" "Yeah, sure." um,
Did you like check to see if it was spam? You're like, because I know some
well,
people.
part of me was like, did they accidentally like email me instead of Rebecca? Like, um, but yeah, I was so curious. I was like, "Hey, is it okay if you tell me where you like found my work?" Because I didn't submit my work to them. So I was like, where, like, why, where, why?" Um, and I was working with Zach Stella, and he told me he found me on Twitter, which was hilarious to me because I like never used Twitter. Um,
There you go.
and that when he saw me on Twitter, he also said that I was like on a list of like prospective artists already. So I don't know if maybe because I had talked to maybe like Cynthia a long time ago or something. I
Cynthia
don't know.
Shepard.
Yeah. Um, so I am not sure how it happened, but it did.
That's great because so many others that I've spoken to, like ArtStation's a big one where there was discoveries made. Twitter, you never know. I mean, you really truly don't.
Yeah.
So I guess the lesson is to anybody out there who is like, don't be afraid to use your social media, even though it is a great pain in the ass to update it. And I mean, at least for me,
Yeah, I hear you.
I dread it. If I could have my own publicist, I'd be like, that's the first thing. I'd be like, can you just do that for me? Because I don't want to get on the Twitter
Yeah.
today.
I don't even want to
find
look at
out.
it.
Yes, not interested in
Yeah.
the Twitter, and so okay. Your very first assignment was then for the game. Which card?
It was two. It was Circle of Dreams Druid and oh my god, it's slipping my brain.
Does
Wild
it?
Shape,
Okay,
I
all
think.
right.
So they're
And
from the Adventures in Forgotten Realms set.
mm-hmm. Yes. And then my personal favorite is Demonic Bargain.
Mhm.
Obviously, got it behind me. But I was curious, what did the brief say? What did the brief say? What kind of creativity do you get to add to it? You know, that kind of thing. So with Demonic Bargain, what was the brief, and where did the color? I mean, it's just I love everything about it. Just tell me the whole story.
I'm not sure if we're allowed to share the brief or not. I'm unclear on that.
I have
Uh,
had people do it in it wouldn't be a precedent. I think
okay.
I think it's fine. Well, I mean I know that it's fine because many people have done that before. You're allowed to talk about it after the fact of it.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, so it was. I don't remember the exact wording, but it was like my favorite um, pieces that I get from them are usually spells and They tend to give me like a lot of room to just be abstract and like work with whatever the heck I want to do. So it's just like, so picked a demonic bargain, very basically. So there weren't a lot of constraints. I did a couple of different sketches that were wildly different from the one they picked. But I really love drawing like weird cups. That is something that is just a delight for me.
Huh.
So I was really happy that they picked this one because it has like this weird little grotesque cup in it. And, the smoke is all these just like psychedelic demon horns and things. And like, you got the bright pink eyes. So it was wholly self-indulgent. This is also the only painting, like the only original painting that I've kept and haven't sold. Yeah, so I really like this one. And the colors, I go back and forth between like very rich, earthy colors that are more muted and like autumnal kind of feeling, or like very green, and then just like intense psychedelic colors. I love hot pink. So with this one, demonic bargain, I don't know, it doesn't sound earthy to me. It sounds like it could be really bright and psychedelic, like you're summoning something from another world, something strange and occult. Why shouldn't the colors be just like violently intense and strange? So yeah.
It's like the Giallo films of the 1970s, with like Suspiria, where you use the brightness as to. I mean, yes, it's if the image is, when you look at it, it is a very dark, very violent experience. I mean, she's bleeding into this, into this chalice. But because of the pink, it makes it sort of takes you a step back. It makes it like an abstract beauty, where because everybody always says, well, you want to have like the artwork that somebody hangs in the living room, which I don't necessarily like particularly buy. I have a Nightmare on Elm Street original, and I have, so I mean, I've got horror all over my house. So if that had been blood colored, I'd still be cool with it. But it's abstract enough that it could be something that would be acceptable in a living room setting, which is kind of cool. I mean, have you seen any of those Giallo films, the like Suspiria, Dario Argento?
Yeah. I like I've seen the original Suspiria, which is fantastic, and there are some other probably more recent films that have a lot of that like bright psychedelic lighting. Are you familiar with Mandy?
Yes. Oh my
Yes,
goodness. That's
Mandy.
intense. That is intense.
I love that one. I think the reason I love that one is because I don't know, sometimes you see something and you get the sense that the people who were working on it just really loved it.
Yes.
And that felt like that, for sure.
I mean, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's gorgeous. It's incredibly well done. Nicolas Cage gives I mean, like, we're talking unhinged. I mean, like,
Yeah.
he is just it's that kind of movie where you're like, that's why I'm going to see it. Like, that's Nicolas Cage, like, in like pure like form, like, but there's no like cheekiness. I mean, he's really good in it, like, really really good. I mean,
Yeah.
he gets like teased a lot because of the whole Wicker Man remake, which I wasn't all his fault. I think a lot of stuff went wrong in the making of it. I think a lot of studio interference happened with that one in particular. But he is a great actor, and that's a great movie. It's. I mean, it's not for everybody, for sure, but it's great.
Yeah, I liked Mandy a lot. But yeah, so stuff like that I really enjoy. Just the bright colors mixed with horror. Like you can have hot pink and still have it be scary. Like, pink has this association with softness and femininity and like flowers and whatever. And it's like, no, also violence. Like,
There is this great vampire movie in the '80s called Vamp, where the movie it's got Grace Jones as a queen vampire in it, and she is it's a strip club that houses vampires, and she's like the head, like, but the entire movie is is lit, no joke, in neon green and neon pink. Like
This sounds amazing. I need to
you,
watch this.
Andy Warhol did the body makeup on Grace Jones. Like it's actually
Oh my God.
really cool. If you can check, it's on Blu-ray or you can find it. It's available. It's a really good
Yeah.
like good '80s vampire movie with a lot of like incredibly cool lighting, like lighting Los Angeles in pink and green like throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
It's
That sounds
fantastic.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
the tarot deck that you created, uh, I'd love to hear about. It's a lifelong thing for you, correct?
Sure.
It was,
Yeah.
now, do you do the readings yourself? How does uh, are you? Is it trained in it, or how would you describe that? Like, do you get
I mean, I know how to read tarot. I guess that's it. Some people get like training and stuff, and some people are like super have rules about it and whatnot. Um, I am not like a professional reader. I don't usually read to strangers for money. Um, I got into it pretty young, probably around like 13, maybe somewhere around there. I originally was interested in it because even younger than that, I really liked Cardcaptor Sakura, which is like a kids anime where she has these like cool, like very tarot inspired cards, and like the creatures in them are like these weird conceptual creatures, and they escape, and she has to go capture them all
yeah?
and seal them back in the cards. So I thought that was really cool. I loved the idea of cards having these concepts in them that come to life. And as I learned more about like actual tarot cards and how, sorry, I have a cat here that is tearing up the seat. As all right, you gotta stop. I love you. Um, as as I learned more about the actual tarot and got older, I thought it was really cool how art created stories and like relatable experiences, and they were sort of these archetypes that you could lay out and it would create a story or a map that you could read. And that it was a really great way to kind of like work through my emotions or work through a problem I was facing, or just do some introspection and reflection on myself and how I felt and my behaviors and who I was and who I wanted to be, and just stuff like that. And also, it was very fun, at that age to like read for your friends and like talk about like I don't know your like crushes or like things you were
Right,
going through in school. It's a great way to have conversations with friends and stuff like
right.
that.
Yeah, you use
So
it as a way to, it's sort of a smoke, or it's not, it's an excuse to get the deep stuff out without embarrassing yourself.
yeah, yeah, it can be a great way of what's the word for it? I can't remember the word,
Like a
but
catharsis or
no, that's not the word I'm looking for. Like no, I can't think of it.
well, maybe yeah, well, like 15 minutes later, it'll be like, aha!
Probably.
But okay, so now that's fascinating. Using the tarot as a way of self therapy, it sounds like is
Yeah.
that's really I never thought about that being a possibility because I'm more more of a cynical minded person. I think you know, oh, is this, just a bunch of, hocus pocus, so to speak? But that's a valid reason to do it. That's really, I, I don't think I've ever heard anybody put it that way before.
Yeah, I wish people were a little more familiar with that usage of it, because I think that is a very popular usage of it and
Really?
what it is at its like core. There's definitely some more like I've had readings and done readings that were a little spooky, but at its core, I think it's about facilitating. That's the word I was looking for. Facilitating conversations
Yes.
and and having like introspection, exploration of yourself, and connecting with others.
That's fascinating. And so, what? what drove you to do the blood tarot? What was the was it scary to step out into the realm of it being something that was a money making possibility, like to take something that's private and sacred and then have to put it out on sort of the global stage, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I had always wanted to do a tarot deck. There were some attempts in college, but I think at that age, I didn't quite have the like project organization skills to like really do a long-term project.
Yeah.
So, I did some cards and it kind of fizzled out. And for my thesis project, I did like a little oracle deck, but it was pretty small. It was like 12, 14 cards. Um, and that was fun. But I think um, I got to a point. So I started getting into the like science fiction fantasy community. I was finding that I wasn't a good match with a lot of jobs because of my style, or like I didn't have the technical skills yet. And um, I was just like, okay, well, I'll just work for myself. I'll just do my own thing. I don't care. Like, it's fine. Um, and I knew I had always wanted to do a tarot deck. And part of me was kind of afraid of like taking on that project and being a perfectionist and feeling like I wasn't good enough and I wouldn't be able to do it. And I just told myself, like, if you don't do it now because you don't feel like you're good enough, you never will.
Hmm.
So you just need to you just got to do it. Um, and so I did. And it took years of work. And, at some points I was like, I hate this. I'm struggling. And other points it was amazing and like synchronistic with things that were going on in my life. And it seemed very like magical. So it was all over the place. And, as projects are, it took years and, but yeah,
And the response was obviously very positive. Must
yeah,
have been a very life affirming experience for that to
yeah,
happen.
it was really, really nice. Like I think when I launched, I did a Kickstarter to fund it because it was like, you know, printed and shipped and all that stuff on my own. Um, I was really afraid that I would not reach my goal because it didn't feel like I had a big following. And then suddenly just like everybody came out of the woodwork and showed up and it like funded in, I don't know, 2 hours or something. Just a couple hours, I think.
That's so cool.
Um, yeah, and it went way beyond what I asked for funding. So it felt great, and I was surprised and overwhelmed, and it felt good to know that I had funded it. But I hadn't finished all the art at the time that I kickstarted it, so it was the journey that went beyond the Kickstarter.
And you're like, I gotta finish it now. Like,
Yeah,
and so then the extensions that came with it, like your shop right now on your website is closed, which I was going to ask about that. Is there like a revamp happening, or what's
I just wanted a break. I wanted to enjoy the rest of the summer without like extra things going on. So I closed it
gotcha?
for August. It should be opening up this week. And I'm gonna share. I made like a new painting recently. So
Is
I'm gonna launch prints and stuff for it next week
is
or something.
is this personal, or is this for
Yeah.
the cool? And when it comes to personal pieces, like what where do they, I mean, they come from dreams, but like what would you say the most challenging personal piece that you've worked on was, like one that I mean, you don't necessarily have to dislike it, and you could even love but it was like so challenging that it really just kind of got to you, as far as like it was, I don't want to say difficult birth, but there was a lot of labor pains with it.
I mean, definitely the tarot, but I think that
That's
part of that is the magnitude and like, and
yeah.
all of the stuff that goes along with a project of that size, customer service and shipping and
Yeah.
and designing and all, yeah, all of that. But as for like one-off pieces, like individual pieces, there were some cards in the tarot deck that were difficult because the tarot deck is an established system of cards with meanings. So some of those cards I don't have like a personal connection to. So digging around and like finding those personal connections um, was a struggle sometimes, and also how to depict them was sometimes a struggle. Um, I do find that the pieces that I struggle with the most tend to be my favorite or tend to be the more interesting pieces. Um, and that's just kind of like a general thing. I feel like Demonic Bargain was one of those. It wasn't a personal piece, but I struggled with like, what am I going to do for this?
Really?
And it took me a while, and then it just happens after a bit of having no idea what I was doing.
Really? That's interesting. I would have assumed that demonic bargain just it seems so like, just there that I would have assumed that was like less tricky. But yeah, I guess you can never really tell. But it does make
Yeah.
sense. You know, the I mean, I've known some people who say that the difficult ones that they don't like them, but that's cool that you are able to have a positive from those challenges. You know, at least on a whole, from what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think one, I like a challenge, and two, I think when a piece is challenging, it's uh, it forces me to kind of like have more of a conversation with it and really like figure out what like kind of what it wants to be on its own terms. I know this is very like a little woo feeling as far as like art goes, but um, sometimes it's just like you pick away at something and it's just not working and it's not working, and you just have to keep going and keep diving deeper to like drag out the like farthest reaches of like creative ideas, and then finally when it comes together after doing that amount of digging, it's like, this is actually really cool. I really like this. I spent a lot of time with it. It's something that feels a little newer to me, or um, it feels like I earned it, I guess. Yeah.
That's okay. And so now, one thing you had mentioned, and that I would like to go into is the topic of burnout, and being an artist and burnout and what happened to you. If we could go a little bit into that story and maybe get your perspectives on how you get, what happens when you go into it, how do you get out of it, and what are some of the ramifications that you feel when you have that happen to you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still dealing with burnout right now. I don't know the way out of it. I actually asked some friends the other day, I'm like, what do I do? I feel broken. And they're like, I don't know. Nobody knows.
Do you? I
But
mean,
yeah. Oh,
when you
go
say
ahead.
burnout, though, but you're still producing, so always assumed
Yeah,
burnout meant
that's,
you're just spent. Am I perceiving that incorrectly?
I mean, I'll get into it.
Okay.
So what happened, I think, was after the, so around last year, I was starting to feel burnt out. My tarot deck was done. I shipped like maybe close to 2,000 packages and
Ugh.
like was dealing with customer service by myself. My inbox was a disaster. Like I was
Yeah.
dealing with distributors and all this stuff. Um, and and like also like I have no storage space here, so I was storing it at my parents' house, which was 2 hours away. And so every week I was driving 2 hours to my parents' house, sleeping on the floor there while I spent every day packaging and shipping stuff. Um, and just like I did that for weeks, probably like 3 months. Um, so it was like a physical burnout. It was a creative burnout. I think there are a lot of factors that went into it for me. One is I was doing all of this in the pandemic, which adds a next layer of
Yeah.
stress and anxiety, especially with everything that was happening with shipping and like
Yeah,
shipping
yeah.
supplies, paper supplies,
Oh,
all of that.
nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. And then, I had finished a big project, and talking to other people too, I feel like sometimes when you finish a big project, you just kind of feel empty. Like, um, a friend the other day said that they felt like, you have an artistic voice, and at that time, they're just like not feeling like they have anything to say anymore. And I think I'm been kind of feeling that. Um, and like, it's probably been a little bit over a year now that I've been in the worst of it. And I have been doing my own stuff, but like not really that much. Like I need to make art to feel like a normal person. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I think in the past year, I've maybe done one like really finished final piece, which I just finished recently. And it took me like a whole year to finish.
If
Um,
if I wait, can we discuss that? And assuming that this would be released after the release of that, is that possible? Because I'm curious what this personal piece is about.
yeah, I can, it's out. I can share it with you if you
Oh,
want.
okay, all right. I didn't know if
Um,
you wanted.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I can
yeah.
talk about that.
Okay, yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, it's just, it was a piece that I was working on. I kind of wanted to do something that, because I had done so many tarot cards that were all very like symbolic and like had meaning behind them. I wanted to do something that didn't have meaning. It was just cool and fun. Um, so I started putting stuff together and collaging, and I came up with like this little idea, and I really wanted to play with intricate like borders and stuff. So I did this piece called The Fairy Night, which just has a bunch of stuff I love. It's a little grotesque, has lots of lichen and mushrooms, scary fae creatures. Um, and, I got to indulge in a lot of detail and some fun new things. And even though I didn't want it to have any kind of like meaning, and I don't think it's symbolic in any way, it does have a story now, where like this figure, and I'll send you the photo. This
Okay.
figure has, it's like this knight that is kind of an amalgamation of like human corpses and plants and things. And um, so the way I was thinking of it is it's kind of like a weird, creepy mushroom corpse fae mech that like the fae pilots and stuff, with its mycelial networks and whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah,
They follow you when you like mushrooms. They can sense life. Like when you walk by them, they reach out to other life forms. Isn't that so interesting?
mushrooms are weird and very cool. I love
Yeah, yeah,
mushrooms.
yeah.
But yeah, so it kind of ended up having a story, and it fits into like a project that I've been wanting to work on for a long time, and I'm finally like beginning to just get this creeping bit of momentum. So now this thing that I just did for fun is getting absorbed into maybe what might be a future project.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, that sounds like at least a healing like pathway. And I think it's if the story comes afterwards, I think that's fair enough, right? I mean, you
yeah,
did what you set out to do. When you created it, it had no hidden message. But then if the message comes later, I mean, what can you do about that?
yeah. Yeah. So going back to burnout, it's like I didn't do a lot of personal work, just because it felt like I had no voice, I had nothing to say, no creative will really. So I did a lot of um, like client work, because it was easier to work on other people's projects and I
Hmm.
had to pay the bills. So I mostly did client work. So I was creating, but it feels different to do client work than to do my own personal work. It's a bit of a different process, and it requires different, I'm not doing as much like ideation or project planning and stuff like that. I also just have not been on social media this year pretty much, which I think the business side of doing art has me
It's
very
draining.
drained.
Yeah, it's
I'm
draining.
still doing paintings and mostly client work. But I'm not doing a lot of like big sales and stuff and social media and marketing. Um, and I think just focusing on rest this past summer and like, connecting with friends, picking up some hobbies and stuff else in life that is outside of art is good. Um, so it was just being kind to myself and not forcing myself to do work when I felt so empty. And I'm at a point where um, I have some just the past like 2 weeks or so. I've had these projects that I've had in my mind for a long time, and I'm starting to just slowly like take little bites and like build up a little momentum. But I feel that coming out of burnout is not a linear thing. It's not like you're
Right.
back to work suddenly. Um, there's some days I feel like I'm making a little bit of progress and it feels good, and maybe I'm getting a little bit of that creative willpower or like voice back. And then the next day I feel like useless and broken and empty, and I just need to go outside and take a walk and not think about art because it's just so overwhelming. So
Right. I'd
yeah.
imagine, in my mind, I'm getting a vision of like a scorched field. And then when plants start to grow back, there is not a particular, like, they don't grow back in uniform, and a bud may grow and then may die, or the bud may grow
Yeah.
and become whatever, but it takes time for it to regenerate itself. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame that people going through that would feel that they're useless or broken, because
Yeah.
that to me is it's so not true. There's so much value to art and to artists like you that it's heartbreaking that you have to go through that. It, and if it's any consolation, I mean, you are very useful to a lot of people, and there are people who cannot express themselves like in any sort of way, shape, or form, and the arts are a mystery to them, and so there's definitely like you may feel that way, but you're never useless. And I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's just, hopefully that is something you can try to remember, because it's
Yeah.
important to know that you are valued. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, is because I saw your art and I thought, this is just something else. I must speak. I must speak. So, um,
Yeah, I mean part of it is just not being so hard on myself, because I think I'm very hard on myself to do a lot of work and be productive, and I never feel like I'm doing enough. And everybody in my life around me is like, Sam, you need to like take a break. You're working too hard. And I'm like, no, it's not enough. Like I'm never going to be good enough. And I think burnout has been good in that way, because I've I've learned to value myself outside of work, by coming up with hobbies, or learning new skills and hobbies, and reconnecting with people in person, and making friends and stuff.
I know,
Um,
right?
and I think, and just learning to be nicer to myself about my my productivity, because I think there's a lot of outside pressure from society as well, and seeing other friends do awesome, which I'm extremely happy for everybody who does awesome, and like my friends are awesome, they're great. But sometimes I do turn around and put pressure on myself because of that, and I just
Yeah,
need to slow down and be kind to myself, and you know just figure things out. It's
yeah.
okay.
It's human nature for us to do that. We go into like they even done studies where they had two, I believe it's like women who were over their 90s on treadmills, and they had one going slightly faster, and the other one compensated and brought theirs up, every time. Like there's like that inclination to do that as a person, but I get, especially with art, right, is it's a completely unique journey. There is no other way than your way, right? And so even though you can't stop yourself from feeling that, that urge to not compete, but just sort of you're like, oh, I need to
Yeah.
keep up, I need to keep up, I need to keep going.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's there's something too about like it's so hard to slow down these days because it feels like social media and technology, everything is just going so fast. Um, at least in our society,
Oh, big time.
that like it feels impossible to slow down. It feels like you're gonna get left behind and
Yeah.
forgotten, and you're not gonna be keeping up, and it's okay. It's okay. I'm still alive. People
Yeah.
are still gonna like my art.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
okay to not post on Instagram for like 6 months.
Yeah.
You should take care of yourself first because um, so much of social media too is just like it's like a content machine. It's like take your art, make it content so that we can
Consume.
use our app that is built to be addictive to like give ads to people and just make insane ad revenue um, off of your work.
It's
um,
it's yeah, it's not right. I mean, it's not something like human beings are not made to interact with that many people. That it's just not how we're wired. So
yeah,
it's already destructive in that aspect. It's sort of like the giant town square where everybody gets to decide who's a witch and like it's it brings that mob mentality out, and then of course
yeah,
the constant need to put out product. It's very
yeah.
stressful.
It's like it is amazing in a lot of ways because I've met so
Yes.
many
Yeah.
amazing people through there. I can sell my own work and make a living off of my own work, stuff like that. Stuff that I can never do without it. But at the same time, a lot of it is built in such a way that it is addictive and detrimental to your mental health. And so it's hard. But I've found some things to like about social media, and I have kept some things going over the summer as I took like a big break. But I'm not putting pressure on myself. I think that's the big important thing for me right now.
Well, that's good. I mean, I mean, and I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, but when I first contacted you, you had said, just not right now. And
Yeah.
I wait. I'm patient because when people who I'd like to speak with, I wait for them to, that when they're ready, because when they're ready, they're able to give a good interview. And so, which, and I'm glad that I waited. It was worth the wait. And I won't keep you for much longer, but I wanted to know anything, anything that you can talk about that you would like to talk about now before I let you go into to relax and do your thing.
Sure. I don't know. I know you mentioned something about talking about the Wicker Man. Were you talking about the remake
Well,
or
the Wicker Man I was gonna save for the
the
Patreon,
original
but
one?
we could go into it now because
Great.
I was just curious, how old were you when you saw it, and like what was, I mean, because it's such an
Oh.
experience.
I think it was only a couple years ago
No.
that I saw it. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit. I love this. I
Oh
love this.
my.
It's amazing. Um, and one of my favorite parts is actually, I guess there was a lot that happens with the movie, and like a lot of what you can watch of it is missing parts of it. But there's this scene that is cut. It's like a monologue by Lord Summerisle
Mm-hmm.
about the animals something, and it has visuals of like these snails, and I love that little monologue. I think it's amazing. I was actually I was thinking about doing fan art of making some kind of beautiful frame with that little monologue in it.
That would be so
So
cool.
I
I didn't
might
want
do
to suggest
that.
it, but I was like, a Wicker Man series from you would be fucking cool. I
Oh
mean,
my
it would
gosh.
just be like, it would be, and it's such a unique film. I mean, a, a pagan musical horror mystery comedy would be
Yeah,
would
so
it,
much.
it's unlike anything. I love telling people like film buffs to I'm like watch this, okay, watch it, and then write me after the end, and it's always there like what what just happened? I'm like I know.
Another movie I saw recently that like, I'm really late to the party, but I think it hit me at like a really good time was Akira. I just watched that and I just like it's so incredible, like the soundtrack, the animation, and like just the grotesqueness and all of this beautiful, gritty stuff, like visuals. I love it so much. And it was such a delight to watch, like at this age when I can appreciate so much more of it. Um, you know, I love finding movies like that, or sometimes it's really good to be late to the party, I think.
Well, there is something to be said about that because you don't have to be part of the hype, you know?
Mm.
You get to have that like private kind of like revelation. Did you see The Witch? I bet you would love The Witch. Did you see The
Yes.
Witch? How did
Yes, I've seen all of his work. That director is from New Hampshire.
really? Well,
And I think
that makes sense.
he does an amazing job of capturing that like New England vibe that like it's really hard to articulate, but he does such a great job. I really like The Lighthouse a lot more than The Witch, although I love The
Really?
Witch. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, he's very much like in the vein of like I mean he is a already a legend at like I don't know he's what 30 something ish like young man and
Yeah.
like incredible filmmaker. I loved that. I loved The Witch. I was just like, it was just like it's so crazy to think that that was a debut for so many people. Like the lead actress, I'm blanking on her name, but that was her first leading
Oh yeah.
role. That was his first film. I'm like, that was a debut. Like that's your first time out of the gate.
Yeah. Manti was like that too. What's his name?
Mm-hmm.
Panos Cosmatos.
Mm-hmm.
That was his first movie too, and that
Yes.
was fucking incredible. It was
I,
great. Like,
it's you
um,
gotta wonder. You're like, wow. Th- I mean, that talk about knocking it out of the park.
yeah, yeah. There's um there's this little podcast of interviews with Elijah Wood where he interviews all of these like I think it's called visitations. But he interviews a lot of artists and like filmmakers who work in horror.
Yeah,
Um,
he's our horror ambassador. Oh,
yeah,
Elijah.
yeah, yeah. And there's some just really great interviews on there. Um, it's something I should go back and listen to because I found it very inspiring. But yeah, horror I think is a really fascinating genre.
I
Um,
Wes
yeah,
Craven once put it as he says that he says that it's boot camp for the psyche, and I think that that's a really good way to put it. Is that when you live, especially especially if you live in a place where you're safe and your needs are met, and you don't have any of that like real threat that that comes with horror. It's a way to sort of prepare yourself for the
yeah.
unpleasantness that life can bring on occasion. And I think that
God,
that's I agree with him on that one.
I'm thinking about it now, and especially with that quote. There was one movie I watched recently in the past couple of years that I think is the only horror movie that really like scared me in my core. It was I don't know. Have you ever seen Green Room?
That is a scary movie.
That was like that. I think it was just because it was a little too real for me, and I was just like,
That is a scary
yeah.
movie.
And I watched it by myself, and I remember I had made myself some like mashed potatoes, and I was
Oh
sitting
no.
on the floor watching this movie like wrapped in blankets, and my partner came home and
You're,
at like a really scary part. And I'm sitting there like with the mashed potatoes, like not able to take a bite, just like internally screaming. And he just comes in, he sees me, and he just cracks up. And he's like, "This is why I wasn't gonna watch it again with you because I can't rewatch this movie."
yeah, yeah, no. I there have been a couple of times where I've been brazen as well, and like, I'm a horror expert, and then I watch it, and I'm like, for the next like week, the next life. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Green Room it's intense, but I do think that it's a very misunderstood genre. I'm very happy that Get Out and Jordan Peele
Mm,
was finally able to bring it to the Oscar sort of thing, where for a long time, it wasn't even something that the Oscars deemed worthy. Like they wouldn't have anything to do with it. I think the only other ones that were was Silence of the Lambs and The Exorcist. That's about it. Like the rest of it was considered quote unquote trash, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you mean to tell me that like uh, Halloween is trash? Like, okay, sure. But so it's nice to see it getting a little respect after all these years.
yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of people these days who, thanks to like the internet and so being able to like fund things in weird ways, there's a lot of like indie stuff out there and stuff that isn't going. And I mean, horror I think has always been kind of like a genre where people are doing like weird things. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think even it's getting more expansive, and there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. And I am not enough of like a film buff to have even like really scratched the surface, but it is something that I do enjoy. So
Yeah, it's for me. If I have to pick my favorite, it's that one, and you better believe me. Like if the criteria, like the newest version of the Wicker Man that comes out, where there's like a cut scene, I'm like buying it, buying it. There is I have this great. I wish I could. I have this original Wicker Man poster that I hunted down. It's got that the wooden sun like in the center of it. Oh, it's so cool. Paid through the ass for it, but it was worth it. It was.
that's awesome.
Yeah, totally awesome. So is there anything that you are allowed to discuss? Anything that you'd like to? I know that taking it easy was the consensus, but just in case, anything that you would like to throw out there, it is plug time for you.
Well, yeah, I'm mostly taking a break. I what I am still doing is I stream on like Twitch once a week, which I've been enjoying because I have just a tiny audience there, and it feels like way more community based.
Hmm.
So I've been enjoying that, and I have a Patreon if you want to get actual updates from me or see my sketches and things that I haven't been sharing on social media at all. It's a nice way to support me, and yeah.
Fantastic.
Other than that, I maybe have some future projects, but I'm not gonna share them for a little bit. I'm not gonna announce them
Yes, that's
until it
okay.
feels like the momentum is enough.
I understand. That's like you don't want to talk about I guess like it's still in its chrysalis stage, right? So you want to make
Yeah.
sure that it get everything forms before you announce the
Yeah, it's still in the worm stage. We're not even at like a chrysalis yet.
Okay, yeah, right. Baby worms. But thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast, and
Yeah, it's
and
been
uh,
great.
and there you have it, folks. Sam is definitely one of the artists I predict to be in the Hall of Fame of MTG art. And if you haven't already, check out our early access streaming of the Brothers War, featuring Allison, that annoying Brazilian, and myself. And luckily, this war doesn't feature any brothers who explode from holy water and Gatorade. I'm starting to think I need to get some therapy.
That sounds like an excellent idea.
Or I could just push it down and instead remind everyone looking to support the show to join our Patreon. Yes, that's much better than introspection. Now, if you'll excuse me on a completely unrelated topic, I have a sudden need to go lock myself in the bathroom and scream for 30 minutes. Good night, everyone. Bye bye.